Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Robles and joined as always by my friend David Sparks. How's it going, David?
It's going great, Steven. You having a good day?
Having a good day. I'm unboxing stuff, got some fun new gear playing with, and we're going to talk about it in a future episode when we get to some smart home stuff. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we're going deep on smart homes and in the near future. Steven is a home kit expert, and I'm looking forward to benefiting from your wisdom, Obi-Wan. So looking forward to that.
Like our menu bars episode where I had to buy a bunch of stuff, I'm going to try and convince you to buy a bunch of HomeKit stuff.
I think this one will get expensive. Let me just set this one up really quick. So I've got Home Assistant, and every time I talk about it, there's a couple people in the audience who tell me Home Assistant is the greatest thing in the world, but it always gives me trouble. And at 2 a.m, the lights in my bedroom were changing because of Home Assistant. I'm just going to leave it there. They're turning red.
Exactly.
They were turning red.
Oh,
I don't know what the
wow.
neighbors thought, but my lights were turning red at 2 a.m. And
Okay,
so we're going to talk about getting more out of HomeKit.
we will. And
I'll just leave it there.
yeah, very good. And talking about more, on More Power Users today, we're going to talk about some robot escapades that both David and I have been doing. But we have exciting news. Even more Power Users. David and I are recording a special episode tomorrow as we record this episode. Our first special bonus episode outside of the weekly show. I don't know what we're calling it. Is this Pro Max users?
Yeah, there we go.
Pro Max user. It'll be the same. Everyone who's a More Power user right now will get this new episode. We'll have instructions on where to get it, but we're going to rank every Star Wars movie. Frankly, I'm shaking. I'm a little scared because I know you're going to be very keen and being an expert on this, but we're going to do
I'm
it.
not an expert, but I am very opinionated.
Right.
That's where it comes in. But yeah, so Stephen and I were talking when he first joined the show, and something that we wanted to do is bring more value to the More Power Users and subscribers. And you get the extra bit, you get the ad free every episode. But we're telling you right now, our intention is to make a bonus episode for you monthly-ish. Okay, so I'm not going to guarantee one every month, but I can tell you we both have a fixed calendar event every month to record a bonus episode. And we had a real fun call figuring out what they're going to be. And it's not all going to be pop culture. We're going to do some, like I'm going to do one where I'm going to give Steven some training on how to use, Keyboard Maestro. He's going to help me out with some things. So we're going to have some techie ones. We're going to have some nerdy ones. We're going to have some pop culture ones. But it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to it. We've got this long list of things that really wouldn't make sense for a Mac Power Users episode, but stuff we're going to do together. And if you're on that More Power User subscriber, you can get that every month. And like I said, we're recording the first one tomorrow. It'll probably be a couple weeks before it gets out because it's got to go through the edit process, and we don't want to overload our best friend Jim here. So just intend on getting something in a few weeks, and we just want everybody to know this stuff is coming. And I am really looking forward to recording this first one because I've already got some admissions from you that I'm going to have to discuss with you. But
And use against me. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to do that. So I'm excited too for our first feedback episode. This is my first one. And we have so many incredible messages and comments from the feedback form, from YouTube comments, from emails. And I came to some exciting realizations. So how do we do this? Do we just go back and forth? Do some
Yeah,
feedback?
let's break through. First, go through some comments and questions.
Right. Well, let's do it. Well, this first one, it was revealed to me how smart the Mac Power Users audience is and how observant they are. Because David from the feedback forum, he said, Oak Tree Pixels. I see that the host of images changed. Who or what is Oak Tree Pixels? So if you listen to our iPhone setup episode, we had links to images of both David's iPhone home screen and mine. And I was doing the links for that show, and I needed a place to host the images. Now, in past episodes, Stephen Hackett had used an Amazon AWS bucket. And in the first episode that I was on about menu bars, I used my Squarespace website just to host the images. But Squarespace is pretty annoying to try and upload many images and then get the links for those images all at once. And so I wanted to figure out how can I do this with shortcuts. So I set up a Cloudflare R2 storage bucket, which is like AWS, but Cloudflare's cloud storage. I used Claude to figure out how to use the API to set it up through shortcuts. And Cloudflare wanted a domain to set up for the bucket. And I just went into my Hover account where I have many unused domains, as probably lots of us nerds do. And oaktreepixels.com was one of my unused domains. That was when I thought I would run a digital marketing agency, and Oaktree is the meaning of my last name. So
Okay.
oaktreepixels.com is just what I put and connected to the Cloudflare bucket, and now I have a shortcut where I can select a bunch of image files, they get uploaded to the bucket, and I get the links back on my clipboard in just a few seconds. And it's now the fastest way for me to do images, but very observant. That was wild.
Well, you know what I just learned is that someday I'm going to have to make you something out of oak. That's what I just learned.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But that was quite shocking that someone noticed the domain, and of course the Mac Power users audience would. So that's what that is. It's my domain. It's connected to my Cloudflare account, and it was just the easiest way to upload a bunch of images and get links.
When you first joined, I told you we have the smartest audience in all of podcast land.
It's true. It is
They don't
very
miss
true.
anything. Yeah.
It is very true. So that was super fun. And this next one is actually a YouTube comment. We've been posting the video episodes on YouTube. Lots of great engagement there. And this is from Joseph. And I identified with his concern. He thought when I was coming on the show that the clickbait YouTubeification of the show might change. And he understands the algorithm in YouTube. But he said that's not what he's seeing. It's a different dynamic with a mentorship edge. It's insightful and interesting and entertaining. And so I just want to say thank you, Joseph, for that. But also I totally get the push and pull of the YouTubeification and like clickbaity nature of things. And I do play that game for YouTube because I need people to. You have to. I want people to click the video, but hopefully when someone clicks my video, behind that is valuable information where they learn how to use their devices. I just posted an over hour-long video on how to use Mac for beginners this past weekend. And, I try to provide that value, but I totally get it. And I appreciate Joseph giving us a shot and me a shot and still enjoying the show.
And I just want to say that mentorship thing goes two directions. There's things like Keyboard Maestro where I'm helping Steven out, but he's helping me out constantly as well. In fact, I feel like my production has improved because just getting feedback from Steven on better gear and setup stuff. I mean, so it has really been a great partnership. I really enjoy learning from you, Steven.
Well, thank you. And all the money that I've spent on apps that you told me to buy.
You're just getting started.
I know. Just getting started.
You should make your robot just track everything you buy because of Mac Power users. Actually, don't do that.
We're going to talk about robots and taxes later. So that's in the later episode.
Yeah. Rich wrote in. He said, huge thank you to Steven. I modified his Apple Intelligence Command Center solve my white whale iPhone problem. I've always wanted a way to quickly set a reminder to reply to an iMessage without having to keep the message marked in red. But there was no automated way. I used your shortcut to screenshot the message screen, figure out the sender from the top center, and summarize the last message in one sentence, then create a task in Things, due today, message, insert name, summary. He says, a lifesaver. And, the thing that I think we can't say enough is that Apple Intelligence, as much as we make fun of it, gives shortcuts so much more power.
That's the thing. And when iOS 26 came out, my first few shortcuts videos after that really went big because Apple Intelligence, since it's built into the phone now, it really opens the door to a lot of things. And screenshots is one of the powerful things on an iPhone where you take a screenshot of anything, whatever's on screen, and Apple Intelligence can parse that in lots of different ways. I created a shortcut that if you see a coffee shop or a restaurant that someone shared in an Instagram story, but they didn't tell the actual location, I have a shortcut that will take a screenshot, look for any text in that image, any identifying markers, and send that to ChatGPT with your current location to find businesses near you and then open businesses in Apple Maps that it finds. And just the fact that that's possible is amazing. The unfortunate thing is you have to know how to set that up, which thankfully has created a business for me where I can make these shortcuts and then just give it to people. But it is incredibly powerful what you can do with screenshots, Apple Intelligence, and everything built into the iPhone.
Yeah, it is really impressive. And if you haven't played with it yet, you should. Steven, recommendations when you're doing this. Should you use the cloud compute or can you do it locally?
This is always tough. I actually just taught in my Shortcuts University course recently, Apple Intelligence, you can use the local model, the private cloud compute Apple model, or ChatGPT. And the issue I run into a lot is the private cloud compute and local model are very limited in how much text they can process. And so if I try to give it a 1-hour podcast transcript, it will error out.
Yeah.
It will say it just exceeded the maximum length.
Yeah,
If I give it If I give it the raw HTML of a website, which I do a lot to parse information from websites with Apple Intelligence, they choke. And so I use the ChatGPT extension 9 times out of 10. I find it to be more accurate. It will pay attention when I tell it things like no follow-up questions, no superfluous text. The ChatGPT extension pays more attention, and I don't have to worry about any kind of limits on the amount of text. So I just default to the ChatGPT extension.
And, you know, the rumors are that with the 0.5 release, which I think we'll probably get in the next few weeks, at least the beta of it, that they are going to have some of the new Apple Intelligence turned on.
Maybe
that'll change your recommendation in a few weeks.
Maybe. I mean, and if Gemini powers private cloud compute and they let the iPhone do tasks for longer, which is a big problem. This I actually learned from Marco talking about the Overcast transcripts. A shortcut action can only run for 30 seconds on the iPhone before the iPhone shuts it down.
Yeah.
So, which is why I can't transcribe some of those longer things. But on iPad and Mac, I can use Apple's built-in transcribe action and transcribe a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Same action in shortcuts. It's just different on the iPhone versus iPad and Mac. And hopefully Apple adjusts some of that once Gemini is the thing powering behind the scenes.
Yeah. It's really weird to me that they're going to, if this is true, that they're going to do this part now when they're so close to WWDC. They've now announced it. I believe it's June 9th, if memory serves.
June 8th through 12th. Yeah. June 8th is the keynote.
Yeah. So, like, it seems to me like they're just trying to fulfill the promise they made last year that they would get it out before the next WWDC. But it seems to me like the big news is going to be in June. And I think we have some exciting times ahead of us.
We do. And we'll have some exciting shortcuts, too, we'll talk about later. One from Francine about translation, and we'll get to that in a bit. But another feedback from the email, this is Anders. He said, hi, Sparks and new Steven for just a couple more episodes. I guess I need a few more before I'm new. The new Steven.
I feel like you're just Steven now. You've been around
just Steven. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I made it. They've been playing around with several great apps that still haven't really found a place in workflows like Devon Think, Keyboard Maestro, Carabiner, Default Folder X. What are some well-regarded and potentially useful apps that you just haven't clicked for you yet? And that's from Anders. And I'm curious your answer. I know one for me. I keep trying. I genuinely do. I just can't get Raycast under my fingers and a part of my default workflows, and more on why maybe later. But any apps like that for you? I feel like you use all the apps.
Yeah, you're still the Spotlight guy, right?
I'm still a Spotlight guy.
Yeah. I'll tell you, there's one right now. I have now paid for it for 2 months. You know, welcome to Mac Power Users. It's called Alter, Alter, and it's like some super kind of AI integration to running your Mac. And it does dictation, and it does transcription, and it's supposed to work with your files. And I cannot get my head around what I'm supposed to do with this application, Stephen. and the other thing that it does that really just drives me nuts is it puts itself in the top center of your menu bar. It like takes over where your notch would be. And I feel like that's very opinionated, that someone would want their app to do that. And I kind of understand why, because they want it to be kind of like your little buddy that's there for you at all times.
Yeah.
But I want to make a video demonstrating how great it is to the Labs members, but I can't figure out how great it is to justify the video. And it's on my list this week. I am going to sink or swim with Alter this week. I'm running it every day, and I'm either going to find ways to make this useful or I'm not. And then, the fact that now Claude Cowork has the ability to remote drive your computer makes it even harder for me to make the case, because it's $30 a month if you pay for it monthly, or I think it's less, obviously, if you pay for a year. But yeah, that's an app that I am really having a hard time make click. And I'm sure there are people in the audience that are just screaming at their dashboard right now, "This is the greatest app, Sparky. What are you doing? Don't you see this?" But it just, I can't get it.
This is a question I wanted to ask you too. When it comes to deciding your tools, a lot of times you can choose the Everything app, which I feel like is Raycast. Keyboard Maestro is like that. Or you can choose highly specified apps. And I understand choosing the one-offs might be more expensive. You might be paying for more subscriptions or more apps, and you just have more apps running in general. But for some reason, I still lean towards like just having Pastebot in my menu bar rather than using an everything app for that, and Moom for window management instead of Keyboard Maestro or something. So how do you feel about it?
No, I totally get it. I think to me, I am very willing to run multiple apps if it makes my life a little bit easier. Like a great question is, in the age of AI, people are saying, well, do you still need Hazel? Because the AI tools, whether it's Def and Think or just the native Claude app, can rename files for you now and sort them for you. So isn't that what Hazel did? And I'm like, to me, that was always the hardest part of Hazel, like getting a reliable name out of it. You had to kind of program it to do that. But all the other stuff, folder monitoring and things like that, Hazel's still the king at that for me. And I think I paid like $40 for it like 10 years ago.
Right.
He hasn't asked for, I have paid for renew. Sometimes he does
He
an
pays
update where you
upgrades.
got to pay an upgrade fee, but
Yeah.
it's just, it pays for itself. It'll pay for itself in the first 5 minutes after we finish this show when it files the recordings for me. So if an app has any utility, I'll keep it. If it doesn't, and there's a new tool that replaces it, I will dump it. I am not loyal to any app. I'm loyal to my time. I'm looking for the most efficient workflow to get my work done and allow me to go, play in the wood shop or play with my dog or do something else. And it's just, to me, even if it's a small app and it just does one thing, but it really helps, I run it.
I want you to take this next one because I don't know this app that they're talking about.
Victor says, I'm curious if Deck Pilot for iOS, iPad OS by developer Keshav Kelani will allow David to move away from the Stream Deck. No, I've looked at these, and I need the physical buttons. These Deck Pilot is there's a breed of these apps that allow you to drive things on your computer using a mobile device, and it's a good idea, and it saves you money. But I really like the physical buttons of the Stream Deck. I've scaled down my Stream Decks. I only have 2. But Steven, I think I was up to 5 at one point because I had
5 Stream Decks?
I had the pedal, and I had
the pedal too.
so I had a lot of gear for them.
Have you seen the new Stream Deck Plus XL though?
Yeah, the monster Stream Deck. Okay,
Yes.
So I kid you not, 20 emails from listeners the day that came out. They're like, hey, you're going to get it and talk about it on the show? I'm like, that thing is ginormous. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. But
Do you not need it, David? Just look at this thing. This thing is a monster.
Yeah. And it's got 6 dials or so. How many dials does this thing have?
I think it has 6 dials and
Yeah.
it's 36 keys, 6
Yeah.
dials.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's a lot of Stream Deck, and it's big. It wouldn't really fit where my computer setup is, so there's a lot of reasons why I don't need this in my life. Just like the big Stream Deck keyboard they just made a few months ago, where you get this, this battleship keyboard with a Stream Deck built into it. I don't need that, but it's cool. I get it. The way I'm running my Stream Decks right now is I've got the Stream Deck Plus, the one with 4 dials on it.
Yep.
And 8 buttons, and I've got the key buttons in there, to mute myself on a Zoom call, to turn the recording light off and on, to turn the lights off and on. And on the dials, I've got the music volume. So I wrote an Apple script to increment the music, just the music app volume up and down, because it's kind of weird on the Mac. Sometimes you want to lower the volume of the music and nothing else, and the volume buttons on your keyboard don't always do that. And so I made a little script, and it just goes it down by an increment of 10. If I turn that dial, then I've got the full-on volume on the next dial. Then next to that, I've got some stuff for the little prompter that I hardly ever use. So I've got that kind of wired up, and then I've got the 32-button big one, what used to be the big one next to it.
Right.
And I've got stuff on there, but I do that. It's interesting. I took them off as an experiment for a few weeks and was kind of okay because I use the conflict palettes of Keyboard Maestro so heavily that, most of the stuff I do, I used to move files using the Stream Deck buttons, and now I just do that with conflict palettes.
Yeah, and I have a Stream Deck Plus so the same one that you have.
Yeah.
And I run a bunch of HomeKit scenes when I'm getting ready to film in like a done recording scene and whatever. But then I also control my switcher through the Stream Deck. And if you can get like pretty adept at switching pages, because you can have many pages of controls on the Stream Deck, and it's nice to have the knobs because I can turn the knob and quickly get to another page of controls.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. I have my HomeKit scenes, I have my ATEM controls, and then I have some audio hijack, like I can start and stop sessions from the Stream Deck. And that's been enough for me. I was tempted by the XL, but I'm like, I can do it all with this one, and it's more compact. I'm good. I'm going to stick with it.
See, now that's another experiment for me. Could I take the XL out of rotation and just using multiple screens on the Plus? Would that be enough? Yeah, it's interesting, but it's a great device and very useful for more than just streaming.
For sure. All right, well, this next one is from Todd. He said, hello, in the last MPU, Stephen referenced getting Finder paths for folders and files using Supercharged. And in the Finder with a folder selected, you can hit Command-Option-C and the path will be on the clipboard. I did not know this. Always learning something new.
Yeah.
So Todd said that. He said, I also switched to Raycast from Alfred. He was able to export and import all his snippets, clipboard history, and he was using Divi for Windows management and migrated that to Raycast as well. So appreciated that keyboard shortcut. And since he mentioned Alfred one more time, I will say the keyboard shortcut that I have been getting under my fingers for Spotlight is searching for files and folders. Spotlight, just the default Spotlight, when you start typing, it comes up with all the things: applications, shortcuts, files and folders, web shortcuts like your bookmarks. And so what I have been doing now is Command space, Command 2, and I basically hold my finger on the Command key while I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And by doing that, now I'm just searching files and folders, and you moved over to that tab. And in the same way, you could do Command Space 3, and that's search shortcuts, and Command Space 4 is your clipboard. And so I've been trying to do that dual, like Command Space Command number, to get more of that file and folder search, and it's actually been working for me. And that's the main reason I was going to use Raycast and try to figure that out. And so now that that's under my fingers, I'm still on Spotlight, sticking to it.
I think that makes sense, and I think you can get away with Spotlight. It's pretty great. Although, see, for me, the thing that keeps me in Alfred is just the third-party workflows. There's so many things in there that I just now become part of my system. Like I've talked about this one on the show before, but there's a link cleaner. Like, you get a link off Safari and it's got a bunch of garbage on it. I just invoke Alfred and type LC and it cleans the link, and then I can paste it without all the garbage on it. And there's a ton of little things like that I do that it's really good for. And the file search, it doesn't require me to do the mumbo jumbo with multiple command keys. I just hit the space bar, and then it goes off. But I will say in Raycast's favor, because I own a license to Raycast, I run it too. I'm always trying to keep up with all these things. I feel like Raycast does an excellent job with window management. If that's where you want to do window management, I think that's really good at that. But like you, I've wired everything into Moom. I just made a new labs video on window management because I've been playing with a lot of stuff lately, and ultimately I have been running with Moom, to set windows. But I wanted to, because I added a second screen, I wanted to be able to move. How do I get one to the top half of the right screen? Like Moom has a command to move it to a different screen, but I wanted to chain that, not just move it to the right screen, but also move to the right screen and to the top. And maybe they have support for that in their Apple script. I don't know. But I do know that Keyboard Maestro does that. Like, you can do window placement in Keyboard Maestro on a specific monitor. So I actually moved my window placement scripts just into the Keyboard Maestro native stuff. And the way I'm triggering it, Stephen, is I hit caps lock plus K. And the reason I use K is because it's right in the middle of JKL. Like if you do like video games or whatever, where you move your character on JKL. So K is centered, on the main screen. J is left side. L is right side. I is upside, top half. Comma is the bottom half. So your fingers basically locate the window based on, but geographically, like you're moving a character in a game. And then the right monitor is P and semicolon. So if I want the top half of the right monitor, I I hit P. If I want the bottom half of I hit semicolon. And the reason this monitor's here is just to run the robot for me. But if I need to put the robot on the big screen because I'm doing something advanced, but then I want to put it back into monitor mode, I hit caps lock K and then P, and off it goes. It sounds nuts, but once you get it rolling, it's very fast window management. And so I'm kind of pulling away from Moom for that part because they don't have a way, to my knowledge, to set it up in a specific location on the second screen.
Yeah. Well, every keyboard shortcut feels so daunting when you're first trying to memorize it.
Yeah.
But if you can get over that hurdle of it just being muscle memory, like I know for me, paste and match style was something that I always wanted to remember. Yeah. And honestly, it's kind of fun because it's a 4-finger keyboard shortcut, Shift Option Command V.
Yeah, that one.
But now I just do it, without thinking. And also Command Shift left and right bracket for going between tabs in Safari.
Yeah. So useful.
Yeah, and just once you get it under your fingers, then it just becomes muscle memory. There's not the cognitive load of trying to remember what it is. So yeah, it is beneficial.
Well, the beauty of that conflict panel, I can't wait to convert you to becoming a keyboard Maestral guy, because I am going to do it. I mark my words. But because it's the conflict palette that makes everything so great. Because all that window management stuff, all you have to remember is caps lock K. That's it. Right. And then after that, you push a secondary key to put it where you want it, and it's geographically located to your finger on the keyboard. It's really clever.
I legitimately, every time I look at my caps lock key, I think of you and Keyboard Maestro, and I know it's coming.
Yeah, it will change your world, man. I'm sure you'll have some YouTube videos on it, and it'll be great. Sure. Yeah, it is really great. Rick wrote in, great show on the Finder, which is a key part of the foundation for how we work on our Macs. David said that he's gone all in on iCloud, putting most all his storage there. In years past, David and others expressed concerns about its security. So is iCloud now safe enough for sensitive documents like financial documents, tax returns, bank statements, etc.? If so, I would like to use it to share sensitive files like this with my wife and other family members. I think the answer is yes, with an asterisk. You want to turn on the service where you can do a private encryption of your iCloud data. The name of that is escaping me now. You remember the name
Advanced
of that?
Data Protection.
Enhanced Data Protection.
Advanced, yeah.
Advanced, there you go. You've got to be an adult about it, though, because once you create that special password, if you lose it, your data's gone. Apple can't restore it for you because they can't get to it. But if you're listening to Mac Power users, you know how to do that. Get yourself a password manager or something, a secure place to write those codes down. But I think I do it. So I guess that's the answer to the question. I have tax return stuff on iCloud, but I do have advanced data protection turned on. You think I'm making a mistake?
No, you're right. And I do the same. I use iCloud, and I do have those same kinds of files in there, tax returns, all of that. I do have advanced data protection for iCloud also turned on. The big thing here is you need Apple devices signed into your iCloud, and those also become your keys for your Apple account, basically.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I have my iPhone, my iPad, I have 2 Macs. I have actually the family Mac, which is signed into my iCloud. So I have a confidence. I have enough Apple devices, and they're all signed into my iCloud account, that I can get into my account. I have access to my account. So even if my iPhone falls in a river, I'm still good. And that's where, if your iPhone or your Mac is your only Apple device and you have advanced data protection on, then you really need to make sure that secret key you're given when you turn this on is written down, couple places. Maybe I would safety deposit box and a safe at home. And so depending on your Apple device ecosystem and all of that, it is important, because Apple cannot get into your devices once you turn this on.
Yeah, if your house burns down and you had the key written down inside the house, you just lost all your data in addition to your house. So it's really important that you take that seriously.
And 2 other tips. There are recovery contacts, so you can actually specify, and I'll put a link to the Apple support article that talks about this. You can designate a trusted family member or friend to be the recovery contact for your account. So if you did lose all your Apple devices and your secret key, their devices can unlock your account. Obviously, that needs to be a very trusted friend or family member, but you can designate that. And I'll also throw in here there is a thing called legacy contacts in your Apple account. And this is setting, like, unfortunately, one day when someone passes away, that if they've designated others as legacy contacts, you can then get into their iCloud, which also includes photos. So if you want to be able to access the photos of a loved one, even if they pass, the legacy contacts is also something I always tell people, set that up. Set up the secure contact for data protection and also the legacy contact.
Yeah, we could probably do a show on just kind of like digital estate
Hygiene,
planning,
security.
kind
Yeah.
of thing. Because that's the thing that, people struggle with. And you don't want to leave your loved ones just completely screwed over,
Right.
I mean, one of my one things I've done on this front is like my wife's 1Password account has my 1Password in it, and I have a trusted friend who's a nerd who's like her Sherpa if something goes wrong. Like he can help her get whatever she needs. But there's more to it than just that. But that's something I think we all should think about.
Exactly. All right, this next one's from Andy. It says, hi, Dave and Steven. In your Finder episode, you mentioned taking Dropbox off your Mac. There is a lightweight Dropbox syncing client called Maestral. It doesn't have the overhead of Dropbox and has been running without problems in the background for me. Cheers, Andy from Switzerland. And I want to combo this with the next one, which was a YouTube comment from the Blue Owl. He says, you can use CloudMounter to mount Dropbox, also Google Drive, as a volume in macOS. So I was familiar with Maestral. Maestral is a lightweight Dropbox client, but still, requires you having a folder syncing on your Mac managed by an app. And so I wasn't, I had tried it in the past. That's not something I wanted to continue doing, but CloudMounter I was not familiar with. So I did try this, and it is free with one service. So I downloaded CloudMounter. I connected my Dropbox account, totally free. You have to pay if you want to use it with multiple services like Dropbox, Google Drive, Box. But what it does is it's a little utility that runs in the background, stays in your menu bar. It's could have gone in our menu bar app episode. And then it shows up, your Dropbox shows up in your Finder like a network attached storage or network drive. And it's pretty cool. It works really well. Connected to my Dropbox. I can upload files, download files. It actually has the iCloud icon in Finder items like you do an iCloud drive, telling you what's downloaded and not. It's a little slow at times because, it's basically tricking your Mac, into seeing a network drive where it's really a cloud service and it's having to communicate that way. But it is a great option. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep doing that. I did finally figure out how to build a shortcut that lets me upload to Dropbox permanently from there, but it only works with files lower than under 150 megabytes, and our episode files are too big. So anyway, I might use this CloudMounter for that, but just want to tell everybody it's an option out there. And it's pretty good.
After we talked about that, I thought about it because I'm running the native Dropbox app, which in my opinion has got better over the years. I feel like it's not as much of a drain as it used to be. But this, I'm paying attention to how often I right-click on a file in the Finder and say, get a shareable link. And it's pretty often, it's a couple times a week. And there's a part of me that's resistant to completely dropping the app because it's very convenient, but at the same time, it's it is a lot of overhead in your system to be indexing and running that stuff all the time. So this is a problem I have put off into the future. I was hoping one of the listeners would give me a magic answer. Maestral, like you, I used Maestral and I didn't have a consistent result with it. I was having some trouble with it being consistent, and that's what I decided, well, I'll just use the Dropbox thing then. But that was years ago. I have not used this app in probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so I'll put links to both Maestral and the CloudMounter in the show notes if you're interested. But David, tee me up for this next one because I got instructions here.
Yeah, Travis wrote in. He says, hello, gentlemen. Welcome to MPU, Stephen. I'm glad I don't have to remember who the new host name is.
We made it easy on everybody.
There we go. Yeah, me too, Travis. Speaking of new hosts, Stephen mentioned that he has a way of getting or making YouTube videos onto his Plex server for his kids, but every time he makes a video on how to do it, they shut him down. Any chance I can find a way how to do this? I'm looking forward to your first feedback episode. Godspeed, my friends. And you know what? We need Godspeed for this because we post this to YouTube, and anytime you talk about, the first rule of YouTube is you don't talk about downloading from YouTube. That apparently, that sentence itself may have just got us banned. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. So I'm going to speak in not so veiled terms, but I'm going to give you the step by step, as if you were, downloading a video from any website per se. We'll just say that. And so step one in the chain is it has to happen on your Mac. And so you have to get a link to your Mac. And what I use for that is Transloader. Great app, Eternal Storm software. And you download the app on your iPhone and you download it on your Mac. Really lightweight, runs as a utility in the background. And Transloader will live in your share sheet. So if you're looking at a website and you hit the share button, Transloader is just an option. And when you tap it, it will then send that link to any other computer connected to your iCloud account with Transloader installed. So I have a Mac Mini running Transloader, and so that Mac Mini gets the link. And what you can do in Transloader is tell it what to do with that link. And so in the Transloader Mac app, I can say when you get a link that's, maybe a video, give this link to this other app. And that other app that I use is Downie. And so this then gets the link from Transloader automatically. No action is needed on the user part. No one has to click anything. And then this app, I'll just call it the D app from now on, because maybe this is what gets an issue later. But this will then download the thing and put it on your computer where you choose. And this can force .mp4 format. You can do the highest quality. And so now you have the actual file of the thing that you're wanting to save. And then from there, it's just where do you put it? You can use shortcuts to move it. I use Hazel to move it. That's another great use case for that. And Hazel will then move that file to my network attached storage, which runs my Plex server. So on your iPhone, share button, Transloader, and the rest happens automatically. Transloader goes from my iPhone, gives the link to my Mac. On my Mac, Transloader gives the link to Downie. Downie does its thing. Hazel moves that file to my Plex server. And hopefully that's enough information to explain what I'm doing there.
Yeah, that was good. Hopefully we're not banned now.
hopefully not. Hopefully not.
The Plex server, I just got to say, there are two breeds of people. There are the people who put everything on a Plex server, the people who don't, and we are opposite on this. I just can't imagine hoarding data like that. I think with younger kids it makes sense, but for me, especially in this age of streaming, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff.
Well, and what it allows is there are oftentimes I get a recording of something, like my kids to have a dance recital every June. Yeah. And we get a recording that's like an MP4 file. And it's like, well, I can put it in an iCloud shared folder. I could put it in Dropbox, or I could put it on our Plex server. And now any of my kids and my wife, or on any of the TVs in the house, we can play that dance recital and it's just available. So videos like that, plus making your own personal video sharing network minus the algorithm, all of that together, Plex has been worthwhile for me.
Like I said, I think part of it is just like how old you are when your kids are at that age where they watch the same thing over and over again. Like when, my kids were younger, it was DVDs, and we had some DVDs that I didn't know was possible to wear out, but they did, and now I think the modern version of that is a Plex server.
That's it. I watched The Lion King every morning for an entire year on VHS when I was a kid.
Really? Was that your thing?
I could time it perfectly, and I knew how long I had to watch it before I had to get on the bus for school. See,
that explains why you are a musical theater nerd. I feel like Lion King, that's like Shakespearean musical theater, right?
That's it. And I always forget Hans Zimmer actually did the music on The Lion King.
Yes, he did.
Which is always wild to me.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, we
Very
have a bunch
talented guy.
Oh, yeah. We have a bunch of feedback, too, about robot assistant stuff.
Yeah, well, people are interested in this stuff. Andrew wrote in, he said, using David's implementation of Claude and Obsidian for task planning, did he consider using the Obsidian plugin periodic notes and task notes? Why and why not? I wanted to do this thing as native as possible with Obsidian. I didn't want to add any additional plugins if I could avoid it. I mean, the star of the show here is Claude Cowork. It's not Obsidian. The Obsidian stuff is just kind of a layer that lets you get to the resource files easily, but I didn't want to have a bunch of plugins. And the other thing is, I kind of like rolling my own stuff, and with this, I can make modifications to the system without having to rely on a plugin.
Okay, very good. And this other question came from Timothy. Got the course, appreciates your work. My issue is that I use 3 different Macs in 3 different locations. I'm not sure how to handle setting up a robot that works on all 3.
That's easy. You just have to make sure that the text files are always synchronized. Whether you're doing it in NotePlan, Obsidian, DevonThink. I heard from a bunch of people that are doing this with DevonThink. The underlying system that syncs the memory component of the robot has to always be working. Like I made a mistake when I was learning this stuff, where I did a bunch of work on my laptop, and then I just shut the lid, and I went over to my desktop and started working, and it was doing a bunch of stuff wrong. It didn't remember what I had just taught it, and I realized, what happened is I shut the lid before the files got synchronized. So the version on the desktop was the old version, or there were skills that I had created that just didn't exist on the desktop. And so now I'm always very careful if I work on it on the laptop to just make sure everything's synced before I shut the lid. On the desktop, that's always on, so that stuff is always syncing. But if you're using 3 computers or 5 computers, it doesn't matter so long as you have a reliable sync for the memory component.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And now, there was another question here about renaming is awesome with Claude Cowork and the robot. Do you still need Hazel?
Yeah, we actually kind of talked about this one earlier. I don't use Hazel to do the renaming anymore, but I still need Hazel for a bunch of other stuff. But yeah. Rosemary wrote in, she says, I like the robot assistant stuff. I hate Obsidian thoughts. This is the most frequent feedback I've got since releasing this course. People saying, well, I want one, but I will not use Obsidian. And just to be fair, I get the exact opposite. 2 people saying, I love Obsidian and this is perfect. So this is a very polarizing app. But yeah, you don't need Obsidian. We talked about it in the show, but you could use NotePlan. You could use DevonThink, which a lot of people are doing. You could just get a folder with text files in it. The main thing is, the point I wanted to make is, in order for this robot to work, it has to remember the manual. You have to give it the instructions, and those are done in text files. That's by far the best way to do it because they're so easily digestible and modifiable by the robot. You could just make a folder full of text files. That would do it too. Obsidian is nice because it allows you to get into them very quickly and see them. And it's free. That's the reason I covered it in the course. I didn't want to make you buy an app in addition to the course. But yeah, you could do it just about any way you want.
Very cool. And I also want to mention here, we actually got an email from Jim. He started with Obsidian and the robot assistant and then moved to NotePlan. And he actually had an article that he wrote a couple years ago talking about the switch to NotePlan and how he uses it. And so we'll put this link in the show notes, his blog, the original MacGuy.com.
Yeah.
And he said, try NotePlan. It's really good. It works great with the robot assistant stuff. And we've talked about it before. So I'll put this link in the show notes.
Yeah. Jim's a friend of mine. And all he did was, because he built it in Obsidian, then he put the files in the NotePlan database, and he just gave the robot an instruction. Hey, NotePlan is now the source of truth. Go through all the skills and change anything that directed at Obsidian to direct at NotePlan. He said it took him like 10 minutes and it was working.
That's awesome.
So you really, like I said, this is all about getting that AI connection and the harness into your Mac. It's not about Obsidian at all.
Right. And then Sean asked, how do you figure out what donkey work goes to the robot?
Yeah, anything that makes me annoyed or is a focus block that I can give it, I will. I just did a new one this morning as part of my shutdown routine now, because I have a folder where I put, it's called MacSparky Sort and Personal Sort. Like as documents come to me, and I always put them in there. And I used to on the weekend go through and sort them out. And I've done various things with Hazel over the years to try and do that. Well, now the robot's got so good at filing and naming documents. Just now, every day when I run my shutdown routine, that's one of the robot tasks is go through that folder, give them names, and put them in the right folder for me, file them for me. But that's a good example. It's like something that's annoying to me, and now I've got a very easy way to get the robot to do it for me, and that's one less thing I have to do. Give me more time to journal.
That's good. That's good. Well, there are a couple other things I'm going to ask you, but we're going to save it for more power users because Claude Cowork came out with an update, and it can all the way up to controlling your mouse and keyboard. And I'm going to ask David about that in more power users. So more on that later. All right, this next one's from Sam. On the burn bag folder, I use the trash in the same way. Effectively, it is set to clear items after 30 days. Are you using the burn bag as just an extra couple weeks to retain the file as protection against accidental deletion or something else?
Well, I have a personal failing, Sam. When I see that little trash can with trash in it, you know what every fiber of my being wants me to do?
Empty.
Hit the right click and empty trash. I don't know what it is.
Delete.
It's just my personality, you know.
Well, I have a really bad habit where I will literally command delete and then immediately command shift delete, which is to empty the trash.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple times where I just do it so fast and I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, that wasn't good. Yeah.
Right,
so this is a safety net for me that if I do like flagrantly empty my trash, that those things are still there. The only stuff that really goes in the burn bag is stuff that I possibly may need to see today again. And I put in for 90 days. I got enough room on my hard drive that can stick around 90 days. And once in a blue moon, I need something out of that burn bag. So it actually just happened to me last week. So that's the reason I do it. I don't put it in the trash. You're right. If I was an adult and could just leave the trash with trash in it, I could effectively implement this using the trash system, but I prefer to have a safety net, and that's why I use the burn bag. I also got a bunch of email from people saying, well, you could tag them, like you could give the file a color, and if it's like orange, then it deletes after 2 weeks, and if it's red, it deletes after 6 months. I don't need any of that stuff. 90 days is fine, you know. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but I find it very useful. The other thing I do with that burn bag that I find frequently is I have a version on my local Mac and I have a version on Dropbox because sometimes I need to share a big file with somebody, and that burn bag is got a 2-week fuse on it. And so if I share a big file with somebody after 2 weeks, because then, you know, if you put it in your Dropbox sharing, then it stays there forever. So I use that Dropbox version of it to just get rid of it after 2 weeks after I send somebody a link.
Gotcha. You should have the Mission Impossible theme play 30 seconds before the burn bag deletes. Just a little cue, a warning.
Yeah, but yeah, I did that years ago, and I never looked back. It's a great little hack.
That's fun. All right, so Steven said, I have a question. After listening to a bit about your internet Wi-Fi setup, sounds very similar to mine. He has AT&T Fiber and Eero, and was asking questions if it was time to go to Ubiquiti. And we just wanted to kick this off to say we're going to do an episode on Wi-Fi and networking. I'm a super nerd about this stuff too. I have a 5 gigabit fiber connection to the house. I get 4 to 5 gigabits on my Mac Studio because of my Ubiquiti backhaul, and learned about all the SFP plus ports and all that. So we'll do a whole episode about Wi-Fi networking in the future. I love this stuff.
Steve, I have to tell you, 4 days ago, there was a big truck in front of my house with a machine that was grinding channels down the middle of my street. And they're installing fiber on Max Barkey Street. And I am so happy.
That is an incredible feeling when you know that fiber is coming.
Yeah. My understanding is it's probably another 6 to 8 weeks before it gets to my front door, but the cable isn't laid. I actually went out and I told the guy, if I give you $100, will you run a trunk line to my house? And he just laughed, you know. And I told my wife later, I'm like, he must hear that so often. And she's like, no, he probably never hears that.
I'm going to put in the possible titles, Bribing the Fiber Guy. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that's it. I think we just picked it.
That's it. I will say we built this house over 4 years ago, and internet was a concern because it's kind of in a rural area.
Yeah.
And so I contacted the two companies. Frontier was one, which had fiber, and Spectrum has cable internet down here in Central Florida. And both of them said, we don't service that location. And I was like, well, that's terrible. So I was looking into, I was going to say Skynet, but what's the? Yes, I was looking into getting internet from a water wheel. No, the satellite internet from Tesla, Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink.
I literally put in a deposit, and I was going to do Starlink because I guess that's my only option. But the problem is the customer service. They don't like because the address doesn't exist, they default to we don't service that area. So once the house had an address on the record, I contacted them both again, and Frontier was like, "Oh yeah, we got a 2 gigabit service." So I was like, "Oh, okay, well that's amazing, thank you."
Yeah.
And so we did that, and I can actually get up to 7 gigabit service, but the price difference is like another $100 a month, and I was like, I think I'm good with 5 right now. I'll just stick to that. So.
Yeah, I can get, as I understand it, with my new one. It's called Cityside, and for I think it's like $100, I can get 2 gigabytes, and for $200, I can get 4. And
that's the thing. But you need the backhaul. That's what I had to understand is like, I needed the Ubiquity system. I had like only particular ports can use over a gigabit service in my switches, and then you need like the multi-gig service across all the switches if you have multiple in your house. So like, we'll get into it. We'll do a whole episode on it.
Yeah, we have stuff to talk about. I honestly think I'm probably fine with 2, but you may convince me otherwise. But we're going to do a Wi-Fi show, and it's not going to be about high-end Ubiquity stuff. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi in general, understanding the technology, what the available options are. But that being said, Steve and I are both kind of Ubiquity fanboys, so I'm sure that'll come in part of it. So if you have questions on that, let us know. Stephen wrote in, I have been receiving the email from the past month or so when the new MPU episodes are released. Oh, I'm sorry. I have not been receiving the email. Is there a place I can go to resubmit my email? Yeah, Stephen, sorry about that. we moved vendors, so we now have it running through Kit, and we had to move the emails over, but there was a question with the way some of the names had been put in the list. It's not, I want to be very legal about the way I do this. And they said, I'm not sure that it's proper for you to take all those emails over. So I said, then don't bring them. So some people got left in the old list because of switching. If that's you, we got a link in the notes. You can go sign up again. And if you haven't signed up for it, please sign up for it. We put effort into that newsletter every week. You get, when the show launches, this is something I've been working on. The moment the show launches, you're supposed to get the email at the same time now. It's going to have all the links from the show, so you don't have to write them down if you're listening in your car. I also try to find something fun that Steven posted on his site or something I post on my site, so we add a little bit of extra content. And we'd love to have you join that newsletter. So there's a link there. Sign up for it and get MPU in your inbox every Sunday morning.
All right. There were some questions for the new guy. I think that's me.
Yeah, a bunch of people wrote in me that say, somebody wrote, I have a question for the new guy, and I thought that's so funny. I just made that the title. But there were several, but I picked 3 that I thought were the funnest. Mark said, a month in the MPU chair, what do you think? What's your biggest surprise?
Well, it's still an honor, and I'm having a blast. And so that's what I think. It's been super fun. I've learned so much from David and the audience, and I think that's the most surprising. When you listen to a podcast, you're on one side and you hear the hosts every week and you get to hear what they say. But now being on the other side in a host chair, you hear from the audience. And just from this feedback episode and the comments and the emails, one, the Mac Power Users audience is incredibly gracious and wonderful, and we're so accepting of me coming in as a co-host, and I want to thank you all for that genuinely. And these people are brilliant. I mean, you people are brilliant. I'm noticing the domain of an image that I shared in the show notes to just knowing about all these different apps and services, and it's really fun. It's really fun to be able to nerd out with a bunch of like-minded people.
Yeah, I always tell people our audience is it's a lot of professionals, professors, PhDs, a lot of smart people who just want to get their Mac to work for them better, and they have great questions, and they'll call you if you don't get it right, so you got to watch that. Jason wrote in, what topic caused you to do the most research so far?
Our interview with David Pogue, which did really well, obviously he has a 600-page book.
Yeah,
and
that was a lot of work.
I could not read every page, but I tried to read a lot of it, and so maybe that was the most time. But I do think the menu bar episode, which was, I really wanted to find a lot of different utilities. When David linked the website that talks about menu bar apps, I really did dive in and look through many of them to see which ones would be useful for me.
Yeah.
And so, but that was also super fun. I discovered tools that I'm using now to this day, like Moom, and Parcel is up there. And so that was super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Larry wrote in, Stephen, what's your most embarrassing non-Apple Power user habit? And I can answer this question for you. You don't back up.
I still don't back up. I don't back up. I know Parachute, someone sent that app, and I'm sure it's great. I'm working on it. Honestly, I was ready to do it, David. I was ready to set up Time Machine legit on one of my network attached storages, and then I looked at the available space, and I only have like 1 terabyte free on one and 2 terabytes free on another, because they were just 2 or 3 terabyte drives I got with the NASAs.
Yeah.
And so I looked up. I was like, all right, let me upgrade everything.
Yeah.
I'll buy 20 terabyte hard drives, stick them in the NAS, and I'll use it for Time Machine backup.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've looked at prices lately, David.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Prices on hard drives that are like
Even
large
spinning
storage.
drives. Yeah.
Spinning drives. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars for a single drive that's like 18 terabytes or more.
Yeah.
So I still plan to do it. Maybe after tax season, I'll look into being an expense for next year, and I'll buy a bunch. But
yeah, I mean, you've got all the harnessing there. You just got to plug in a big drive. So
that's all I got to do.
I was just going to say, I don't think you have to do a Time Machine if you have a network attached storage like Carbon Copy Cloner script running. But,
okay, let me put that in the notes. Carbon Copy
I don't think
Cloner.
you have to. I of course I would recommend it, because Time Machine also gives you the ability to recover something you lost. But that just having your NAS attached is better than nothing. The other thing you could do is just get a Backblaze account. I mean, you have a big hard drive, just send that stuff up to Backblaze.
Okay. And you never would think about that running in the background randomly?
Nothing. I mean, when you first start it up, it takes a while. I remember, because mine is an 8 terabyte backup, because I've got a big internal drive, and
right.
I think I got throttled by my cable company because I was uploading so much for a while. Yeah, but you've got that big fiber line. You don't have that problem either.
I do have 5 gigabits. It'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll mention too is clipboard history. I refer to it all the time. I know that I could do keyboard shortcuts to quickly get the last like 5 to 10 clippings.
Yeah.
Do a thing and get what I copied previous, but I don't go that far in the clipboard. And I don't know if maybe that's a power user thing. Do you do that? Like, do you have keyboard shortcuts for getting the last 5 clippings?
No, I just go through them manually when I need to go back. But I do like having them, and I do find myself going back into them frequently. But I don't have that like mapped in. The advantage is I use Alfred, and when you open up the clipboard history, you can just type a few keys and it'll jump to the one. You don't need a keyboard shortcut. It like searches it dynamically, if that makes sense, when you open it up.
Right.
But we actually did a show on clipboard history on Mac Power Users with Stephen Hackett, I don't know, a year or two ago, and there are so many apps to do this, and it is bananas. I mean, I use Alfred because I've got Alfred. If I used Raycast, I'd use Raycast. Keyboard Maestro also does that. Keyboard Maestro has a cool feature where you can paste as plain text or paste as rich text, or have it scrub it for you. So there's like so many ways to crack this nut. And I know you use a basic application for it, but I feel like any clipboard history makes you a power user on that. I don't think that's a point of shame. Whereas the backup one, man, I'm going to give you so much grief for that.
One day soon. I'll get there one day soon.
Do you have thoughts, because this is before you came on the show, about clipboard history with the new Spotlight?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's great that it's there.
Yeah.
It is defaulted. I wish you could choose how many clippings it's saved versus a time scale.
Yeah.
Because right now you have to set it to like 8 hours or 7 days.
Yeah.
And 7 days is better than, like, when it first launched, it was like 24 hours or 7 hours.
Yeah.
So it's better that way. And I've actually been looking at it more because I've been practicing with the Command Space Command 2 for files and folders.
Yeah.
So I'm doing more with the Command Space Command 4, and like, we'll see. I might see if that can, be enough of a use case. But Pastebot also syncs across devices, which is nice.
I feel like that if Apple were to take that clipboard feature and make it sync to all your mobile devices too, that would be really impressive, because there are third-party apps that do this, but they always feel a little brittle to me, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. If Apple did this just as part of your iCloud data, your clipboard, and you could, I could save a clipping on my phone and it would be on my Mac, and etc. Yes. I mean, that would be really nice. I hope that's one of my hopes for this June, that they take that to the next level.
Do you use any like third-party keyboards on iPhone that like offer this kind of functionality?
Yeah, I mean, Text Expander has one that does that, where it remembers your text expansion snippets
Right.
But that doesn't really do that problem. There is one.
I'll mention the one that I use. I use OneTap, and OneTap, it can do clipboard history type stuff, but OneTap can also just save a bunch of links, even so much as like into like files and folders. So I will have things like my YouTube channel URL, my podcast's URL, and I can hold the globe key, switch to OneTap, and then quickly put something on my clipboard that I share all the time. So while it's not a clipboard history, it does make the keyboard really useful. And OneTap is actually on all the devices. I think you can get it on your Mac and iPad as well. But I've used this one periodically.
Yeah, there's one called Quip, Quip, that does that, and it does cloud storage too. And I've played with that, but I haven't got really adept at using it often. But Quip does that as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel this is something that Apple should solve for you. When they made the clipboard and I realized it didn't sync across, I was kind of shocked. But maybe just, they only had so much time to get it out the door. But they've had another year now. So hopefully in June we get that syncing across.
Yeah. Is Quip with a Q?
Yeah, Quip.
Okay. Link to that will be in the show notes as well. All right. We're going to talk about a little bit about automation.
Yeah, adding a new segment to feedback called Automation Corner, because Stephen and I are both into automation. And we had Francine write in to the show about shortcuts. She says, I'm part of a group in WhatsApp where people post in Hebrew or English. When folks post in Hebrew, my standard practice is to long press, copy from the pop-up menu, switch to Google Translate, then click the paste button. She's like, it's a big pain. I'd like to make it easier. And Mr. Robles, was it the oak tree? The oak tree?
That's right. Oak Tree Pixels. That's right.
Oak tree. Stephen Oak Tree just wrote her shortcut. So kind of walk us through what you did.
Yeah. So one of the things is the Translate app on the iPhone does have shortcuts actions, but it's limited to the languages you can use. And Hebrew is not a language that it supports, the built-in Translate app, as well as many others. But ChatGPT actually does a bunch of translations. It supports even more languages. And because ChatGPT is built into Apple Intelligence, you can use it in shortcuts. And so I built this, and I actually had someone else request a Hebrew translation specifically. And so I built this two-way translate shortcut. Link will be in the show notes if you want to download it. But what it does is you can copy something or share it. So you can, tap and hold on text, tap share, and then run this shortcut. It will detect the language that you're giving it, show you the translation in English, and then ask for input. So it will say, what do you want to reply? And it will translate into the language that it detected at first. And then it will put that translated text on your clipboard for you to send back. So typically, or you can just do this in the WhatsApp app, tap and hold and then copy, and then maybe run this from the control center, or tap and hold and then share the text, and the ask for input will come down, the translations will come down, and you'll be able to go Hebrew to English and back and forth, and it will work with any language ChatGPT supports, which is a lot. So that'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, another way you could do that is you could take a screenshot and then just send the screenshot to the modified AI to just translate the whole page for you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, with the screenshots and shortcuts, it is really powerful. I've made a shortcut called Remember This. And all it does is it takes a screenshot and it ascertains what the screenshot is about. If it was a screenshot of a Safari website, it can actually pull the URL using the what's on screen action. And then it just creates a Apple Note. It could be appending a note that's already created or create a new Apple Note every time. And then it uses ChatGPT and Apple Intelligence to kind of give a little summary of what it is. It'll include any links it recognizes, any phone numbers, any addresses, make up a title for the note using Apple Intelligence. And now you have just kind of a ongoing onboard brain that will just remember. Because a lot of times you see something and then you try to remember where you saw it so you could find it. Maybe it was a social media reply, a text message, an email, a website. And so that one Remember This shortcut really resonated with a lot of people because it just allows you to just remember whatever you see on screen. You can take a screenshot of it and that shortcut will remember it.
And, I may modify that to create a new draft. So convert it to text and put it in drafts. And then I can feed it to the robot if I want the robot to do something with it. Yeah, I'm going to look at that.
I will put it in the show notes as well. That I call it the Remember This shortcut.
Yeah, anything else you're working on automating right now? Got an automation challenge you're trying to work through?
I am quite a number of them. Since Mac Power users, I've created a bunch of new shortcuts specifically for Mac Power users, like uploading the audio file. I created my Dropbox uploader that uses shortcuts, my Cloudflare image uploader. But one of the things I wanted to do was in Circle. It's the community I use for my shortcuts community. Circle.so is the platform. And I knew they had an API, and I knew that I could automate it with Zapier. I could automate things like YouTube videos going to a Circle space and creating a post. So I was like, I wonder if I can do that in shortcuts. And so just this past weekend, I've been working on that shortcut using Claude to help me ascertain the API. And it can get a little complicated with dictionaries, but I finally made that yesterday so I can run a shortcut, type a little text, include a link, and it will post it in my Circle community, even in member areas that are locked. And I can post a Circle from shortcuts, and I don't even have to open the app, because I don't know if you're like me, but like my shortcuts community, if I go in there and I see like the 30 badge on the notifications, I can't think about it until I've now cleared through it all. And sometimes like I want to post something to my community, but I can't get caught up in all the notifications right now. And so I needed a way to like separate that, where I can post into it without actually going to it. And that little shortcut is going to help me out.
Yeah, I did a similar automation this week. I have some old Star Wars stuff around the house. I'd bought some of these figures and as I was getting older, and I don't have enough room for them. We just don't have a place to use them, and they're just sitting in boxes. I'm like, I'm just going to sell them because I don't use them. And so everybody says, well, you got to go to Facebook Marketplace. Well, I detest Facebook. I just don't like going there at all. I hadn't logged in like 10 years, but I did. I logged in and then immediately regretted it because suddenly I'm starting getting these notifications and all this stuff from Facebook. I don't want to go there. So I taught the robot to go in using Chrome, to go in and check if anybody bought the thing, check if there's any messages, and I don't go in the app at all. That's
good.
It just
That's
does
good.
background for me. But so it's like, finding automation around things that you don't want to do. That's the thing.
That's really good. And so one other one I'll say, I mentioned it briefly, but in Primary Tech Daily, that's a daily podcast I do for members of the Daily News. What I was previously doing was I had a bunch of RSS feeds in a shortcut, like The Verge, 9 to 5 Mac, TechCrunch, Tech Meme. Yeah. And basically what the shortcut would do is show me all the stories for today with published date as today, and give me a choose from menu, and I would select whatever stories. I'd usually do 5 stories, whatever stories I wanted to include in that day. But I was having to like visually scroll through 7 different news sources, a lot of times seeing duplicate stories. I was like, I wonder if I could.
I've seen it 7 times every time because these sites all cover the same stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So what I did was I made the shortcut even bigger. And what it basically does is gets all the headlines and summaries or excerpts of all the articles of all the RSS feeds, gives all of that to ChatGPT and says, find me the top 5 stories of today, and the amount of times it was covered across these sources, rank those higher.
Yeah.
So if a story was covered across all 7, that would be ranked highly. And it gives me 10 options to choose from, which I felt like was still a good spread of the amount of news. I get a choose from menu now of just 10 items rather than 7 menus of 30.
Yeah.
And I choose the 5 stories, and then it will go through and process those 5 stories and make it into a script that then I could read for the daily show. And that saved me a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much we can do with this stuff. One other automation I'm playing with as we record this, Anthropic just released co-work computer control. So since we recorded that episode about Robot Assistant, there's 2 things that happen. They released something called Dispatch, which allows you to use your phone to control your Claude installation. And I did a public YouTube video on this. We'll put a link in the notes so you can watch me use it. But I basically did my shutdown routine from bed. And the way it works is it's not opening a tunnel to your computer. It's your login account. So you're logging in. As long as you're logged in on your device, you can run it. In order to be able to remotely work, Claude has to be open on your Mac. So if you don't want anybody to be able to do it, just close the app. But it works pretty great. And so you can give it instructions. Like I have a 10-step shutdown where it checks email and does a bunch of different things for me at night. So I did all that from bed using this new
Wow.
dispatch feature. And this, just to make it better, the day before we record this episode, they released what they call a computer control. So not only can you have it run the the skills you have built into it using dispatch, you can have it do separate actions. Like you could say, hey, get that file for the presentation and put it in my share box. Like if you were out on the road and you left a file on your computer, it'd be like having a person go move a file for you, but it's the robot doing it for you. And this gives you the ability to not only do things like file management, but also just drive applications. So like somebody wrote me this morning saying, I'm into the robot. I want to get an MCP for Apple Mail. Which one do you recommend? And my answer was none of them, because they're all third party, made by people that we can't necessarily trust. So what I would recommend is use computer control to drive the mail app for you to the extent you need it, and then just shut the app when you're not done, and there's no risk. So there's just a lot of interesting stuff happening around this space. And Anthropic's not alone. We heard that the gang over at OpenAI is now suddenly working very hard on making something like cowork, because they realize that you can charge money for people to do this kind of work. I just think that we're, like I said when we recorded the show, this stuff is evolving very quickly, and it's great, but there's no time like the present to learn how to build skills out. So whatever platform you end up on, you'll be able to run it.
And we'll talk about more power users and some of the things I've been doing with MCPs. And I did risk some things in my own workflows. So we'll get to that.
It's tempting because it's so easy. Like I moved my email server just because I want this benefit. It's so great when I finish the day and it goes through and reads all my outgoing email and says, okay, you sent an email to this sponsor. You want me to log it? Yes. Now it doesn't even ask me because I always say yes. But so I have logs to outgoing emails, and like just everything is just managed, and it's like having a little helper. It's great.
It is nice.
So let's talk a little bit about stuff we're playing with before we wrap up for today. We teased a little bit last week, but you got some new hardware. Now that you've really got some reps in with the new Studio Display XDR and MacBook Neo, what are your thoughts?
So the MacBook Neo was great, and my main reason for getting it was to make my getting started with Mac guide. I wanted to do it on the MacBook Neo because a majority of people would probably switching to that in the near future. And so that went great. And using it as a computer for that time, like it's going to be a really great machine for a lot of people, especially if you're new to the Mac, for students. The trackpad was still great, even though it's not the Force Touch trackpad like newer MacBooks. Screen is fine. It's not as nice as the Air or the Pros, obviously, but it gets the job done. And I was able to, even edit a video on it, and it was fine. I did send it back. Namely, I returned it because I don't need it, and I have the MacBook Air. And so that's back, and hopefully someone will enjoy it as a refurb machine one day. But it's a great machine for someone looking for that level of Mac.
Yeah, I went into the Apple store and played with one for 10 minutes, and like the trackpad is fine,
Yeah, it's fine.
You can feel the pivot like the old trackpads, but it's fine. And I think the weight, it's heavier than you think. I mean,
it was weird because it's actually the exact same weight as the 13-inch Air.
Yeah.
But because of its like footprint, it somehow feels heavier.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like it's hard to describe, but the Air still feels more airy, which is good.
I still would like to see them make a ultralight where they're solving for light, not for expense. But that's cool.
I think we should, someone, did you see the responses to that, the thing that you wrote? Jason Snell wrote about your article.
Did he? I didn't see that.
He did. He wrote about your ultralight article, and maybe we'll touch on that in more power users too, because he felt like maybe there was not a market for it, but I'm a little partial, but I'm going to side with you. And so we'll talk about that in the Ultralight Macs and the more power users too.
Well, I mean, I think there's a very good argument that the answer is the MacBook Air if you want ultralight. I'd still like to see them make one. Yeah.
We'll talk about it in a second. But the other thing too is Studio Display XDR. It's a beautiful display. I will be honest, like I don't notice a ton of difference in regular use.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm looking at us recording in Riverside. I got Notion. I got my web browser. Nothing is ProMotion or HDR right now. Like there's no, I would not see a huge difference. I noticed little differences here and there. If I'm scrolling a timeline in Final Cut, the genie effect, strangely, is one of the most noticeable ways to see ProMotion. Like when I shrink an app, it's super smooth, which is a small thing, maybe not worth the cost of it. But everything looks... part of it is, I don't know how you feel about this either, like some pieces of my workflow and setup, I want to buy the thing and not think about it for years.
Yeah.
And I felt that way about my filming microphone. When I record my videos, I use the Sennheiser MKH416, industry standard shotgun microphone. It was $1,000. It was really expensive when I bought it, because I was not doing this full time. But I knew if I bought that, I could never think about my microphone again.
Yeah.
That's just the microphone I use, and it's permanent. And so part of that is like, I do just want the best display. I do make videos. I mean, that's a thing that I do. I do edit thumbnails. And so I just want the best Apple display I can get. The Pro Display XDR was out of reach, and I wanted the ProMotion. I used the built-in camera. And so just having that, knowing this is my monitor for the next however many years, and everything looks great, that it helps my psyche.
There's a phrase that woodworkers use: buy once, cry once. Have you heard that before?
I have not heard that, but that's good.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like that mic will be your mic for the duration, right? There's no way you'll ever replace it.
Right. Exactly.
I get it. I talked in More Power Users about how I hung a second screen on, and I talked about during the episode today. So as I've already disclosed, it stuck. I mean, for the first time, I've tried this experiment like 3 or 4 times over the years. And every time, like, it lasts a day or two, and I pull it down because it's a monstrosity on the side of my computer, and my eyeballs can only go to one screen at a time, and my screen has 6K, so there's plenty of stuff for my eyeballs to see. But it is the robot thing. If there's an agent working separate from me, I want to keep an eye on it. And since I had the monitor, I hung it. I knew I was keeping it the other day when I went and recycled the box the Visa mount came in, because I had the screen, but I didn't have a Visa mount for it. So I got one, and I'm like, yeah, this is sticking. So I'm keeping it. I got a second monitor, gang. And it's primarily just used for robot management, but I also put all my communications apps over there too, so I can swipe them out of kind of harm's way during the day. But that's all I'm really using it for.
Gotcha. I mean, I've not been tempted by the second monitor yet.
Yeah.
But
you've got one there, though. You could.
I could. I mean, I literally have this BenQ monitor, and I could, with my Blackmagic, just make it my external.
Yeah.
But I still use Spaces a lot. Do you use Spaces?
Yeah. Well, not as much as I was a few weeks ago. But yeah, I do. I think Spaces are great. Yeah. I do
a lot of Spaces, and I do a lot of 2-finger swipes on the Magic Mouse, because I am a Magic Mouse user, for better or for worse. But
yeah.
Anyway, well, let's talk about Ultralight Macs and also a little more robot talk about MCPs. I want to thank our sponsors, 1Password and SaneBox. And if you want to listen to more power users, including our new special episode that we're recording tomorrow about Star Wars movies, you can support the show. The More Power Users link is down in the show notes. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time.